that, or even contemplated taking such an action, I'm sure that would not be the reason why there's been a freeze this year on the pharmacare pay, both the copay and the premium, that there is no increase in pharmacare. I would want to ask the minister if, in fact, this is a freeze for this year only on both the premium rate and the copay, or if there will be an increase in the future year or the future years of the pharmacare program. And how much did it cost? I think I already know that number, but I'd like that number to be put again in the records as to how much it cost the minister. And if the minister can tell me if this is a one-time budget item which will result in a freeze, or if in fact seniors can expect for years to come that there will be no increase in both the premium and the copay.
Thank you, member. Direct that question to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The simple question, simple answer first. The amount that this policy this year will cost the taxpayer is about $9.7 million. Obviously, I can't predict the future. Wish I could. It would seem what we've been trying to do over the last number of years is to maintain the 70-30 split, whereby the government is paying 70% of the costs, and the seniors are paying 30% of the costs. And if we can keep doing that, that is would be one measure of success. But one of the difficulties is even though we do review drugs, and if cheaper equivalent drugs come along, we encourage people to use those. We try to keep the costs down. Getting rid of the drug patent law, the member from Sackville-Cobequid says. The issue is going to be a struggle every year. It's going to be a struggle for any government, because not only because of increased utilization costs, because of an aging population, but it's the discovery of new drugs, some of which are very, very expensive. For example, there's a lot of desire on on all sides of the House, I believe, to have certain new drugs come into the system and to be paid for. And the thing is that somebody has to pay for them. People at the Senior Citizen Secretariat, or people at the Group of Nine, know that they have to pay their fair share, but they want their fair share to be an affordable share. That's the issue with them. And so no, to make a long answer short, I can't guarantee the future, but I can guarantee that we will continue to try to keep the 70-30 split, and that we will try to keep the drugs as affordable as possible for the seniors who need them. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Minister. Chair recognizes the honourable member from Dartmouth North.
And far be it, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and far be it for me to put words in the minister's mouth, but the minister surely doesn't believe that this is just an election campaign ploy to freeze it for the 1 year, the $9.7 million, so that everybody walks away happy during an election year. And then after the government, if the government should come to power again, to put increases. To put increases on the pharmacare, both the premium and the copay. I would like the minister to know and be aware, and I know the minister is, but I don't know how many members of this Legislative Assembly is aware, that no senior escapes paying a portion of the pharmacare. Now, seniors who are on the premium pay the premium rate plus the copay, and those seniors who are exempted are only exempted on the premium rate and not the copay. So the copay is $315 a year, and those seniors who are living on fixed incomes have extreme difficulty coming up with that additional dollars. And now some seniors are very fortunate that the copay may be eradicated, I should say, in about three months or 4 months, simply because of the amount of drugs they use. There are other seniors who can continue to pay this copay for 8 or 9 months because of the $315 copay that's there. And when you have to put $5 or $10 or 10% or 20% to the cost of the cost of the drug, and you don't have the money, and you have to hold off until the end of the month, when believe it or not, in Canada, the only people left in this country to be paid on a monthly basis are those people who are paid by the federal government of Canada through the senior citizens old age income and through Canada pension programs. And they're paid once a month on the 27th. In the meantime, these individuals need drugs. And they need drugs in order, and prescriptions can't wait. And so they have the difficulty of going out there begging and borrowing from friends and relatives with respect to maybe $5, $10, or $20, depending on their drugs and so on. And I find this, as a citizen, I find this to be extremely embarrassing when people who are proud individuals who have worked all their lives have to come to my office and see if there's something that I can do to help them get that money for their drugs. And the Department of Community Services, simply because they don't qualify for benefits, may not, will not, and cannot provide them with that money. So they have to go to an agency or an organization. All of this is extremely embarrassing, and I'm sure that every one of us in this legislature has encountered at least a couple of individuals who come to our office with respect to this issue. I want to say to the minister, in a country that prides itself, and a province that prides itself with one of the best healthcare systems in the world, I guess my question is why do we torture seniors into putting themselves into these kind of embarrassing situations to come up with the money? And if there isn't some other way in which this can be, this issue of having money to pay for the copay can't be addressed. Now, I know that the minister has indicated that she has said that the group of 9 through the senior secretariat has studied the pharmacare program, and she does believe that we all should pay our share, and seniors, being the proud individuals that they are, agree that they should be paying their share. And for the most part, that is often the speak of individual seniors who can't afford to pay their care. It's not those seniors who can't. And that's the kind of message that gets across. So I guess is that if there were a formula set up, or I don't know, I guess a formula set up whereby you could do some assessments and maybe exempt some individuals from even paying the copay, then that might be something your government might want to look into immediately or in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, member. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Mr. Chair, I can't disagree with a lot of what the member from Dartmouth North said, but I can say that the Secretariat recommended a cap on the prescription price, the price per prescription this year, so that we have put that at a $30 maximum for each prescription. And that cost the province not that much money, actually. It was a very good, a way to make things easier for some people. It would cost us about $100,000, a little more than that, so that does help the cash flow for some people on very expensive drugs. So they don't have to pay it all up front at once. I would say also that even though it's not perfect, 70%, paying 70% of cost is better than many provinces. And although I wouldn't want to raise expectations because it wouldn't apply for several years, but we will be in negotiations, in federal provincial negotiations, over what a catastrophic drug plan might look like for all citizens of Canada. And since we don't know yet what exactly that will mean, what drugs will be covered, what will be considered catastrophic, because they will have to be national definitions. But I'm sure that, although it may be no comfort for the next couple of years, after that, there will be cases of hardship that fund will be able to help out. And I'm sure that it will help some seniors when it is finally developed. And people of all ages, actually, but including seniors. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. The chair recognizes the honourable member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the minister touched on to the National Pharmacare Program, which was supposed to be introduced in 1993. I remember the Prime Minister, the present-day Prime Minister, campaigning on a National Pharmacare Program, and that National Pharmacare Program would be countrywide, and that in fact it would cover not necessarily all drugs, but there would be a basic coverage across the country. That never did happen, and much of the money that comes down through the CHST transfer allotment is part of the healthcare budget that addresses the pharmacare issue. I don't know if the minister, obviously the minister is new in her portfolio, so that she didn't have the opportunity, I'm sure, to speak with the federal government and her counterpart, the minister, with respect to where the National Pharmacare Program is today, if it's on the radar scale or not, or if it's off, or it's just simply a bleep somewhere that we just look at for now, and that the federal government believes that the provincial government should do that through the CHST health transfer tax, and that they should look at individual pharmacare plans. I do know that Quebec is often talked about as having the most comprehensive pharmacare plan provincially, and I don't profess to understand or to know all of theirs, but I guess my question would be to the minister is, are you going to have a future talks with the minister with respect to a national pharmacare program? And has your government done an assessment in the province of Nova Scotia with respect to a go-it-alone pharmacare program, so that there would be full coverage for all citizens across the province? Because, as the minister are aware, there are many people who are employed, who are the working poor, who are employed in this province, who are low-income earners, who have no health benefits packages or drug plans or anything of that nature. And that many of these individuals are excluded from being able to purchase drugs simply because of the high cost of them. The minister, your portfolio is new, there's no question, but I do know that that you are on top of these issues, and I do know that you will obviously, or your department obviously has some data or information with respect to the cost of a Nova Scotia pharmacare program, if in fact that were the case, and if in fact the government has even contemplated such.
Thank you, member. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I believe that there has been, at least a few years ago, some initial work done on such an idea. Not only a Nova Scotia one, but possibly an Atlantic one. And I do know the idea comes up from time to time. I can't say that we have any costs, because there are so many variations on what that could look like. It certainly is one of the things that is needed in healthcare. As the member knows, drug costs are not covered under the Canada Health Act unless they're administered in a hospital. And I do know that a lot of people would like a national pharmacare program. I haven't heard or been told of any willingness for that kind of a program to happen, probably because people know how much it's going to cost. I do think that the move towards including catastrophic drug costs in the so-called health reform fund that has been announced recently, and the funds of which increase every year over the life of the health accord, is a way of trying to address some of those costs, but it would not be the equivalent of a pharmacare program because of the use of the word catastrophic. And I know it's going to take a great deal of work to try to figure out what that is, because obviously catastrophic to one person is not to another, and it's going to be very hard to come up with that definition. I think every member of the House knows that new and better drugs have enabled people to live better, to live longer, and to help decrease hospitalization costs and other costs. But even so, they are very expensive, and to some people, sometimes not available. And there are issues about drug coverage. Probably that's the single biggest number of letters that come to my office are about individuals who either aren't covered by pharmacare, who aren't covered by community services, sometimes the working poor, even not so poor people, but they reach the max on their insured drug costs, and they can't afford the drugs they need either for themselves or their children. And it's a real issue. It's not just more funding for programs that exist, but trying to find ways to fund programs that right now don't exist and that people feel they need. And everyone is aware of it. We try to keep at it, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people suffering out there because they can't get the drugs they need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister, for that. The honourable member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Minister. The pharmacare program is certainly a very important one in that it does save individuals from having to enter into hospitals where the cost is extremely enormous to both the taxpayers and so on. So whenever we can provide drug services for individuals to take at home, like pharmacare drugs, then we're much better off as a society, and we're much better off with respect to the cost. I guess, and I know that there are some drugs which in fact are excluded from the formulary, and I do know that there is a committee that reviews what's going to be added to the formulary and what's going to be excluded from it. And again, I would say that the minister and her department obviously is very much aware, because my colleague and the critic of Department of Health from Halifax Needham has talked about this very issue with respect to particular drugs around persons with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, and the whole picture of persons with long-term afflicted by long-term diseases. And there's no question that we could debate that one here for a whole day. But I guess my question to finish off this part of your budget with respect to pharmacare would be, has there been any conversation with the federal government, who I do believe it's their jurisdiction, to deal with the major pharmaceutical companies across the country and ask them with respect to the pricing of those drugs? Has there been any talk with respect to that area? Because I do remember that I believe it was under the Liberal government again in 1993 that brought this 10-year protection program into pharmaceuticals for R&D, research and development, to be able to have a hold on their patented drug for approximately 10 years before it became a no-name brand drug. So I guess there's a whole host of problems in that area with respect to pricings, which affect a lot of provincial budgets in dealing with pharmaceuticals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, member. I'll direct that question to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, In terms of the drug patenting process, I haven't been informed of any recent discussions in that area. If I will ask, and if there is some news there, I'll report back. The only real progress on a national level that is in sight, aside from potential catastrophic drug coverage, is a national drug review that's going to be taking place. Not just the Atlantic one, which we've had, but a national one, which, although provinces would obviously be free to not go with the recommendations, at least it would attempt to put Canadians on a more equal footing in terms of what drugs are covered or not covered by their provinces. That, I believe, is a step forward, and every little step forward you take on these areas of national importance, perhaps in the end that does lead to a national drug plan. But, that being said, I see no quick end in sight to the high cost of some drugs. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member from Dartmouth North, do you have a further question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the frankness, Madam Minister. It's one of those areas that it's difficult to touch because it's within the federal jurisdiction as well as the province providing input. I want to continue on to health on page 12, chapter 12, I believe, page 9, with respect to the children's dental program. The children's dental program reflects exactly the same number of dollars, $5,400,000, in this year's children's dental program as in this budget estimate as the previous year. And I guess there used to be a children's dental program that came into effect under the Liberal government, or even before the Liberal government, I'm not sure, but used to provide dental protection services or dental programs to children from the ages of 0 to 16. Then under the Liberal government, it was reduced from 16 down to 14, I believe. Now these numbers may be somewhat different. And now I believe under the Conservative government, they've been moved from 14 to 12 years of age now. I don't know how true that is, but I'm sure the minister will give me clarity on those numbers. And I'm just trying to grasp from memory those particular numbers. If in fact there is some real numbers that I should be aware of, then the minister can tell me. And I guess this is anticipation that there is no increase in the child population with respect to this children's dental program. And if there is the exact same cost, have there been cuts in the program that we're not aware of, or that we should be made aware of, this legislature should be made aware of, to provide the same level of service as the previous year? And I guess because my time is running, and naturally I've taken more time than I can, if the minister can explain to me the children's dental program in brief detail, as well as the special dental plan, both of those, and I see the special dental program has taken a huge jump, but I'll come back at a later date with respect to a number of other issues that I have on that. But right at the present time, I would ask the minister to bring me up to speed with respect to the children's dental program, so that it can be a matter of record, as well as the special dental program. And for the ministers, that is the estimates in the supplementary detail booklet that I'm speaking from.
Thank you. I'll direct that question to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And in terms of the children's dental program, we did move to make some changes last year that we thought better of, and reinstated some coverage, so that we're looking at the same budget this year. And the member is right that the age is 10 now, I believe, for costs being covered. In terms of the special drug programs, there was a cost transferred there for prosthetic services, for dental needs, and you'll see a decrease in prosthetic services payments, but it's simply a transfer to a category that is more well, it's more transparent. So it looks like that program has gone down, but it's simply been transferred because we're talking about dental prosthetics. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Minister, the honourable member from Dartmouth North.
You know, and the reason, you know, I was hoping that, in fact, the special dental program might give me light as to what's going on there, because I'm sure the minister is aware of this. We have a dental school at Dalhousie University, the school of Dalhousie School of Dentistry, and we do know that many individuals who are on social assistance end up going to Dalhousie University because it's much cheaper. But those individuals are expected to pay a percentage of the dental bill. Once again, there is no income, because those individuals who are on social assistance, their budget has already been allotted out to them, and the specific requirements of their budget allotment spells out exactly how their dollars should be spent. Yet these individuals are compelled to pay, and I do know that the Dalhousie School of Dentistry does not provide the dental service unless those people have the money up front. And my question is to the minister: if the individuals don't have the money up front, then how can they afford to pay for it? And they have to go again begging, like I've said about the seniors, and being tortured as to agencies or organizations who might assist them in funding for that, because it's not and it will not be covered by the Department of Community Services, as well as those individuals who are on social assistance, who need severe dental restorations as a result of deformities that they encounter. And although the department, through quick pay, may determine that those individuals are not entitled to, and it has no serious effect, they are not the ones who are faced with this very serious dental problem. And they're not the ones who have to live with it all their life. So I guess, is that part of the special dental program that I can possibly look at, or probably comprehend to believe, I should say, that I can possibly believe is where some of those costs can be picked up? Or is this simply something else and those individuals are still left on their own?
Thank you for the question. Direct that to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And, well, again, we're talking about an area of medical care that is not covered by the Canada Health Act. And the Dalhousie Dental School does provide services at a much lower rate than you would get at a regular dentist, obviously. But simply put, when people go to the dentist, they have to pay up front or they don't get the work done. And that's the harsh reality of the way our system works, except under certain circumstances. For example, there is a program at the IWK that we fund that does help children with severe dental deformities, and also work for handicapped children if they have to go under an anesthetic in a procedure in a hospital as opposed to a procedure in a dentist office, then that is covered. But it is certainly one of the aspects to our system that it would seem that we don't like to talk about a lot of the time, because obviously there are a lot of problems with teeth and jaws that need to be fixed, and yet there is usually not enough public money to help people. So the member from Dartmouth North has asked some very good questions, and with the exception of some help Dal is able to offer, and the help that kids get at the IWK for their deformities, there is not much in our system to help people with dental bills. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the answer. Minister, recognize the member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Minister. I am now going to pass the remaining portion of our time over to the honourable member from Hants East, my colleague, and thank him for allowing me to have this time to present the questions forward. Bye.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the member from Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And could I have the time? Oh, I guess I can get it right now.
15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. My colleague doesn't need to thank me for the time he was given. Minister, I have a few questions around nursing home care in my constituency, and looking at the Senior Citizens Secretariat booklet that comes out for seniors under long-term care. It has nursing home care and residential care facilities. And I'm wondering if you can tell me the difference between the two.
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had to double check on the answer to that because I didn't think it could be so simple, but it is. The residential care facilities do not provide nursing care, and nursing homes, as we know, do, and that is the big difference. Perhaps 30 years ago, there was not such a distinction, but there certainly is now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'd be looking at, I think probably the more specific way would be, I think people will be referred to as level 1, level 2, level 3 in terms of their need, and so therefore the facility would be represented by the staff they have and what level of either RN, LPN, or whatever. But can you give me a definition of level 1, level 2, level 3?
The Minister of Health. The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can get the member technical definitions from staff, but the essential difference is that level 1 will very likely require some personal care assistance, but not necessarily nursing care. Level 2 is heavier care, and level 3 is essentially 24/7 nursing home care. Whether it is always, provided by an RN or whether that's helped by an LPN and personal care workers. So, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. The member from Hants East.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. And if you can get me something from staff, I would appreciate that. It's my understanding that for nursing homes in the province, there are somewhere around 75 with pretty near 6,000 people in those, seniors in those facilities. And I'm wondering, is it possible to get a list of those facilities? We have none in Hants East. And so I'd really like to know where they are in Nova Scotia. And it's been a real issue actually for us in Hants East because for seniors to get this level of care, they have to leave the constituency, and they usually go either to Truro, Musquodoboit Harbour, Windsor, or Halifax, and there are people interested in providing those facilities, but they can't get them licensed. I think, and if you can tell me, is there a moratorium on licensing of nursing homes?
Thank you for the question. Direct that to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there has been a moratorium for a number of years. But if someone does apply for a license, we will review it. One of the issues we want to really move forward properly on is good demographics and good studies on locations of where nursing homes should be. That doesn't mean, I don't mean they should all be in the city. I mean the opposite, actually, but you have to be very careful about building spaces if they're not required. And that was one of the reasons, in spite of its flaws, that it was good to go to single entry access, because people weren't doubled up on waiting lists and we weren't having sort of manufactured waiting lists. And we know we need more nursing care facilities, but we want to be more careful about where we build them. We do need some nearer to where people live, and in that case, or where their families live, and they may need to be smaller than some of the ones, obviously have to be smaller than some of the ones that we would build in the metro area. But, pardon me, even in the metro area, it can take too long for someone to get from, I don't know, say, my constituency out to Eastern Passage. It's just as hard for that to happen before and after work during the week than it is to travel longer physical distances. And I know that our executive director of long-term care is very concerned that any new facilities really answer the demographic needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member from Hants East.
Well, I'll take from that, and I like the way your department is thinking, or maybe I should say the way the minister is thinking. If I'll unless I get some other reason to think it's not the minister, I'll acknowledge the minister. But I want to know if this. I said there used to be a moratorium, so I'm assuming there isn't one, and if that applies to residential care facilities as well, or does the department make much differentiation in that regard as far as the moratorium?
Thank you for the question. I'd like to recognize at this time the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there really isn't a formal moratorium anymore. We'll look at anything and try to assess it based on the actual need. We don't we don't want empty facilities, but certainly we'll look at any request. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Hants East.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate that, and I certainly will take that message back. I know there are people who are interested on this issue, and certainly I can think the corridor area in Hants East and Kennecott would definitely be locations. Actually, I had a senior a couple of years ago, and this is an individual who certainly, if she has something on her mind, she makes it very clear to me what it is. And but the thought for her was that she presently is in her 80s and in fairly good health, but she is concerned about the future, and she would like to stay in her community even though her needs are going to increase, and so for her it's a real issue. You mentioned, and I was glad to hear you mention about studying the situation so that you weren't going to have facilities that weren't going to be filled, and that they actually meet the needs of the area. So I'm curious, is there a study going on presently by the department on this issue?
Thank you. The Minister of Health. The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we could look at any area. I mean, there's lots of areas that want and need nursing homes and facilities. The only formal study that we're involved in right now is one with Cape Breton, because there they have, we know, the highest demonstrated need of seniors who need to be admitted to nursing homes. and that is a priority. We already know, and we're looking at all the details. Our health services plan, used to be called the clinical footprint. The health services plan looks at all types of continuing care provided in all areas of the province, and we are involved in that right now. But in terms of a formal plan for nursing homes, that's Cape Breton is the priority right at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Recognize the member from Hants East.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Minister, I'm curious then who, if someone was interested in either building a facility or getting an existing facility licensed, who would they contact in the department?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And they should apply to Continuing Care, and Keith Menzies, Menzies, is in charge of that area of the department. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member from Hants East with 2 minutes left in turn.
Is it possible to get from the department a list of criteria that they would have to meet?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, they're for licensed facilities. There is a list of criteria that have to be met, and they're public documents. So yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member from Hants East.
I'm assuming one of the things I recognize in differentiating nursing homes to residential care facilities seems to be the number of people you can have in them. Is that right? More than 3, less than 3?
Thank you. The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know it is confusing. Believe me, I know. Small options homes can have up to three people requiring a fairly intense level of care. Residential care facilities can have, I believe, 4. And some of the difficulties that occur is when the numbers get above 4 to 6 or get above 3 to 5, because depending on people's conditions and how old they are, their care needs can change quite dramatically within just a few months. And but this whole issue, obviously, it's one that we've been struggling with, well, all along, but more publicly recently, because a lot of the operators of the homes don't know where they stand either, because occasionally hospitals will even send people back to homes where the owners know they're not equipped to take care of the people. So there are a lot of individual situations that require a lot of attention. And some of the work that lies ahead involves changing, updating the Homes for Special Care Act, trying to resolve some of the middle ground between health department and community services, and trying to bring some clarity to all these facilities that exist, some of which, because they're not licensed or even registered, aren't necessarily on anybody's radar. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Time has expired for the NDP caucus this afternoon, and I would like to recognize a member from the Liberal caucus, and that would be the member from Cape Breton West. You have 1 hour in turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be sharing my time with one of my colleagues, and possibly more, but for the time being, I'm first at the batting lineup. I'm looking at page 12.18, that's in the estimates booklet. It's under the title Emergency Health Services. And that is essentially for providing funding for ambulance services in the province, as well as air medical transport, centralized communications and dispatch, and other related services. And I noticed the bottom line for the estimate for the upcoming fiscal year is $65.624 million. Now I compare that to The estimate for when the Conservative government was first elected in 1999, and the estimate at that time for 1999-2000 was $43,468,000. So we're looking at an increase of over 50% in the cost of our EHS services for the province of Nova Scotia during the term of this government. I realize that there have been some wage increases for staff and alike, but would the minister be able to give me the rationale for why there was a 50% increase in the cost of that service?
Thank you for the question, and I'll direct that to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, obviously that is not a year-to-year increase, as the member from Cape Breton West said, since we took power. The bulk of that increase is accounted for by 2 settlements with paramedics and other staff, and as well the increase in the flight costs, mainly because of increased number of flights, but also because of fuel prices and the general increase in the cost of air travel. But as I say, the large percentage of it, even this year, is wage increases. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of correction, I think the minister would agree that my statement was 50% increase for the life of the government. Not that it's on life support, but there's a 50% increase in that particular budget, which is quite significant. Would the minister be able to tell us, I'm particularly interested in the ground ambulance service, because as we know, over the last year or so, there was considerable concern about this $500 fee when somebody would go pick up somebody at the scene of an accident, depending upon whether there was insurance or not insurance and other factors. Are we dealing with about the same number of ambulance calls to the scenes of accidents as we did the previous year? And how's that broken down, the total cost of this particular EHS service that we have? Not the air ambulance. We dwelled on that the other day.
The Minister of Health.
The levels for ground ambulance are about the same as they were, and we're not looking at an increase there or a decrease. They're about the same. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I realize, and it might be a little unfair to ask the minister if she would have that detail in front of her, but is that essentially the same number each year for the last 4 years? I know there could be a slight increase or maybe a slight decrease. I'm not sure. I'm just trying to break it down.
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm sorry, the question I answered was a year-to-year question. We don't have 4-year breakdowns with us for all these costs the member is asking for, but we can certainly get them. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, just looking at the 1 year, going from 56.9 million to 65.624 million. That's about a $9 million increase over last year for the service. That's looking on page 12.18, looking from last year to this year. That, to me, would be well, let's say it would be about a 15% increase over last year. I'm just roughing numbers here. What was the increase in salaries for this year, for this anticipated year?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have part of the wage increase included in here, and part of the wage increase is being held centrally until the contract is finalized. But there are a number of smaller items that have increased. Ambulance premium, repairs and maintenance, and lease extension, for example, for $236,000. We have a fuel increase of $300,000. There are a number of $100,000, $200,000 items in there, but the biggest single item will be wages. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The minister indicated that there were ambulance fee increases, premiums. Did I misunderstand what she was saying, that there was an increase in the ambulance fee over the last year, or contemplated for this year?
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, what I said was the ambulance premium increase, which has to do with the cost of the ambulances themselves. And that was an increase of $145,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Okay. As I understand, we have EHS as the service provider for ground ambulance, or EMC. I'm not sure what the acronym is, but I believe we understand the intent of my question. What was the total dollar value paid to this service provider in the last year, and what's contemplated for this year?
Recognize the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And our forecast for this year is $57,872,000 approximately, and the budget we estimate for 2003-2004 will be $60 million, $67,800. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
I'm not sure if the minister is in a position to answer this question or not, but what is their profit mode? What's calculated in? What are they entitled for profit? Is it 5%, 10%, 7%, or what is it? What is their what do they get for providing this service?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm told that that's a very complex formula, and staff would be quite prepared to write that out for the member. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Yes. Can the minister tell us what the company's profit was for last year?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we do not have that statement with us, but certainly we can get that statement. But I would like to reiterate that the formula is complex, and it's not as simple as a guarantee of 2% or 7% or 50% or such. It's performance-based, and it is complex. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the minister be able to provide that information tomorrow?
The Minister of Health.
For 2-3, we don't have the audited statements yet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We can do our best for tomorrow, but we do not have the audited statements yet for 02-03, but we can certainly do for previous years and do our best guesstimate on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the total funded staff for the Department of Health, I believe, is what, 652.3? Is that up or down from last year? It escapes me looking in the detail.
The Minister of Health. The Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do know the staff is up. We're just trying to locate the funded staff page in the book right now so we can be more exact.
That's gone up 1.
One?
661 from 660. And then we have some recoveries.
Okay, the total funded staff, thank you, Mr. Chair, has actually gone up 1 from estimate to estimate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes there are occasions when the Department of Health has to charge back a fee to the Workers' Compensation Board, through its accident fund. How much money did the Department of Health collect from the workers' compensation system last year?
Thank you for the question. I'd like to recognize the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health.
I may have misunderstood the question, Mr. Chair, but we don't collect from workers' comp. So perhaps the member from Cape Breton West could explain what he's trying to get at, and I could be more helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member from Cape Breton West, on clarification, I guess, of your previous question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is if an employee is injured on the job, he or she goes to the hospital, receives surgery, could be for a broken leg, could be after that for some physiotherapy or what have you. Through the accident fund at the Workers' Compensation Board, is that not charged back? The Department of Health not charge that back to the Workers' Compensation Board?
Thank you for the question. I recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understood the confusion here was arising that you were speaking of employees in general, not employees of the Department of Health. Right, employee in general. And so there's a direct relationship between workers' comp, as I understand it, and Atlantic Blue Cross. And it doesn't come through the Department of Health, per se. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you. Does the Department of Health have a contract with Blue Cross to provide service?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we do have a contract with Atlantic Blue Cross for the services they provide to us. But the services with workers' comp is a direct one with Atlantic Blue Cross. So the workers' comp aspect doesn't come through the Department of Health. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, who pays the Department of Health for providing that service? Is it Blue Cross? Since it's not the Workers' Compensation Board, who pays the Department of Health for providing that service?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And know that the doctors get paid directly. This money doesn't come through the Department of Health. The Department of Health is, not involved in that. It's another system entirely. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is the minister telling us that aside from who pays the doctor for his service, or fee for service, or service for fee, there is no charge from the Department of Health for the hospital stay and all the other services that are provided in relation to that particular injury?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, staff tell me that workers' comp pays the hospital directly, pays the doctor directly, the physiotherapist, whatever is needed. It's not it's not something that, again, I'm sorry to repeat myself, that goes through the Department of Health. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
So I need some clarity here. What the minister is saying is that the Workers' Compensation Board pays the respective health authority, whether it be the Capital Health District or the Cape Breton, Regional Health Authority, and so on. Is that what the minister is saying?
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you. That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the department have knowledge as to how much money these health authorities collect province-wide in the run of a year?
The Minister of Health.
Information. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chair. We do get that information as part of the information that the district health authorities provide to us. That information, as well as information, say, from the Department of Veterans Affairs, so on. So we do have access to that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Minister. Recognize the member of Cape Breton West.
Perhaps, if it's possible, tomorrow as well, if the minister could provide us, doesn't have to be an exact figure, but just as close as possible, how much was paid by the workers' compensation on a district-by-district basis. It helps to be able to analyze what parts of the province the highest incidence of injury on the job, and the cost to the employers and indeed to the Department of Health. Is that possible?
Thank you, member. Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly that's possible to do that. Although I would caution that it's not possible, we'll do it, that sometimes people are hurt in other parts of the province that come into Halifax for treatment. So those workers' comp figures wouldn't be entirely representative of costs incurred in each district. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Minister, recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand, well, before I leave this topic, that would also apply for insurance companies. Most of the insurance companies in Nova Scotia, their parent companies are in the United States. I stand to be corrected on that, but that's my general understanding. And it would appear to me that the Department of Health, in some cases, if someone would go out and get in a car accident, I'm not sure if the Department of Health charges that back to the insurance company or not. Not that I'm suggesting that. I don't know the working formula, but it would appear to me at first glance that the American insurance industry would be getting a free ride not entirely, but to a certain extent. And because if you look down in the United States, when someone goes to the hospital with an incident, unless they have this, like Medicaid or certain programs, the first thing they want to know is if you have insurance, and they charge that directly to the insurance company. And I'm just wondering what the situation is here in Nova Scotia. Is there any possibility of deriving cost efficiency to the taxpayer of Nova Scotia by looking at this issue?
Thank you for the question, and direct that to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if there is an award, we do try to recoup the costs, but there is not a claim back directly to the insurance company. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Minister, recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Does the minister have any idea of how much money could be saved for the taxpayers of Nova Scotia if this issue were to be examined? I know we spend a lot of money on studies in the Department of Health. Maybe it's because it's the biggest department that has the most number of studies, but I've never seen a department, every time you turn around, the Department of Health is doing a study for this, a study for that. Now we have the Nova Scotia Health Research Foundation, and that's essentially for more studies, and with about a $4 to $5 million budget. This is an issue. I could be way off, off the beaten trail on this, but it would seem to me that the taxpayers of Nova Scotia could perhaps get better value for its dollar if the department were to examine this particular issue. So do we have any sense of how much money the Department of Health is paying out because of, let's say, automobile accidents or that sort of thing?
Thank you for the question, directed to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, there was a change in regulations last summer that required a record for admissions to hospital as a result of car accidents. So we do have better record keeping. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Yes, would the minister table that information perhaps tomorrow or whatever, so that members of the opposition would have a chance to observe it? If she has it for the last 2 or 3 years, that would be appreciated as well.
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly, if it's recorded on the system, we can provide it to the House. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the minister tell us how many studies were carried out by her department? I noticed different line items in the supplement to the public accounts. Now, we have that Nova Scotia Research Council, or Research Foundation, and I'm not sure, perhaps 150, 175 studies were undertaken, grants were issued last year. And still we have all these other studies that are carried out within the Department of Health. How many studies were carried out by the Department of Health last year, and how much did they cost?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I think we'd have to do a study on that. It depends if the member from Cape Breton West means a formal study. I expect that we can get that information on how many studies our department carried out last year. But I think he realizes that he is asking for a lot of information that is not necessarily recorded in the form that he is asking. And we will do our best to provide it, but not all the information can be provided by tomorrow. We do either formal or informal studies in the department on almost everything we do. If we didn't do that, we would just be going from pillar to post without any plan, and that is not the case. In terms of the Health Research Foundation, yes, some of the grants go to fund, if you like, studies, but research studies and research grants, whether it's to that foundation or whether it's through the universities or the community college or the hospitals, these are the lifeblood of the advancement of medicine. And on an administrative level or a bureaucratic level, obviously we need to do studies. We need to do studies on wait lists and why they're there and try to standardize. That's one example. We have to do and but in terms of research grants, this is a huge industry for Nova Scotia and Halifax, and I hope the member from Cape Breton West isn't suggesting that health and scientific research is not important to the advancement of our society. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the minister would be rather naive to think any member of the House would think in that form. But it leads to the next concern that I have, and that is information systems and the information system technologies that we have within the Department of Health. We've spent a lot of money on upgrading our information systems and management of information within the Department of Health. I'm looking even on page 71 of the supplement to public accounts. It has Medical Information Technology, Inc. Now, that may be nothing to do with information systems. But I guess what I need to know is, and perhaps the minister can't answer here today, but how much money has been spent on managing our information, our medical information and statistics and everything else? We seem to be every year, study upon a study. Well, if we do a study, then that study will come in with a conclusion. We should do another study, and that one will come in. We'll have 2 or 3 options, and maybe we need another study to determine which one is the best. Well, perhaps so. We've already had one Royal Commission. We spent, I'm not sure how many millions of dollars we spent on the Royal Commission to do what we're supposed to be doing effectively today. But I need to know how much money is spent on information systems and management of our information that we have within the Department of Health.
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, as one example, our Meditech system will cost about $56 million. But when you talk about information systems, you're also talking about just ordinary day-to-day management of organizations, of all the DHAs, of the Department of Health. Everything these days, I know the member knows this, but is based on the use of information systems and computer technologies. And an example of an expense that is relatively new in the DHAs, for example, is the ability to send the results of X-rays and CAT scans electronically from a place like, Liverpool to Lunenburg, or wherever in the system, so that the patient doesn't have to go out to the Cobequid Multi-Service Center, pick up a copy of her ultrasound, and get in the car and take it physically to the VG to show a technician there. These can be sent electronically now. So there are huge investments in information systems. This does make life easier for the patient and easier for the doctors, but it requires technicians and it requires an investment not only in the capital of the technology side, but the operating side. And this is a huge expense to all businesses and all institutions in society today, and it's only going to get bigger, as I think I mentioned earlier, to to have the kind of information system on patient records available that ideally we would like across the country would be a national expense of about $4 billion. And certainly we are developing our share. I mean, we want good patient records. We want the kind of information that a lot of people think we already do have, but in fact we don't. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what the minister is saying, and I agree that type of technology and information systems, that's probably saved a lot of lives and probably cured a lot of people a lot quicker than if they had gone through the old, get the x-ray in, let's say, Sydney or Yarmouth, and then tuck it under your arm and drive to Halifax and hope you'll be able to receive the service required. But I mean, I've asked about the air ambulance system. We weren't able to get, complete detail on that when we need it. I asked about the doctors. I wasn't able to get detail on that I wanted. I asked about the WCB. The minister doesn't have that at her fingertips. And I asked about the ground ambulance system. I know I've asked about quite a few issues, and she's talking about more than $50-some million spent on this new information systems. She can appreciate my concern. We're spending more and more and more, but we don't seem to be achieving our goal. I mean, some basic information, statistical information, should be readily available by just a punch of a few keys on the computer, I would think, after spending tens of millions of dollars. Bearing in mind, and this may appear to be a political statement, and perhaps it's meant to be, because we're in the business of politics. When the minister and the government came to power, it said $46.5 million. It was going to solve the problems. Now, they're after spending close to $600 million more than when they first came to power. So, and I know we've had an aging population. I know there have been a lot of pressures on the government about the paramedics and so on and so forth. But it seems a little unreasonable that the minister doesn't have that type of detail that she could access in short notice. I see individual members in the House here with their laptops. They're able to access, I'm sure, information from their office systems and statistical data that they would have on file at a moment's notice. Why, in the name of heavens, don't we have somebody from the Department of Health to be able to communicate electronically with the department so we can get that information in a timely fashion? We're talking about information systems and modern technology, and the Minister of Natural Resources says the Speaker won't let him. Well, he has one in front of him. If the Speaker's not letting you to, well, I beg to differ. I think that the Minister and her staff should be, like they do in other jurisdictions and federally, they have that information at the touch of a button. As the question's being asked, the information is being downloaded from the respective department. If we've achieved so much, why are we so slow in providing that vital data? I mean, I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
Thank you. I recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I agree with what the member says. At the last I recall, the ruling, at least for question period, was that we were not to use laptops and BlackBerries and so on and so forth. I didn't realize the rules were different for estimates debate. That being said, the member from Cape Breton West is asking questions like over a 10-year period, over a 5-year period, over a 4-year period. And that is not information that is contained in the estimates book or information that is necessarily available at the flick of a switch, because the information has to be compiled in a certain way in order to access it that way. And that being said, we do have we have been tabling answers on a very timely basis. We do have answers to estimate debate questions here that were asked at the end of last week, including the air medical transport, and I'm going to be tabling in a second, the information project, the legal services explanation to the supplements to the public accounts, the physician age breakouts, and so on. And that information is available, and I will table it. But even if I did have a laptop computer here, Mr. Speaker, some of that information would have to be reorganized in a systems way in order to provide it in the way the member has asked. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect, that's simply not good enough. After spending tens upon tens upon tens of millions of dollars to come in and say that our system is still somewhat archaic, that doesn't wash. It simply doesn't wash. And I'm not putting it all on the shoulders of the minister because she's relatively new to the department, but the buck stops at the top. And we have 650 some employees in that department. Surely to heavens, with all that brain power, we should be able to get our act together. And because information systems, technology, that was a big budgetary item 4 to 5 years ago. And I just can't accept, quite frankly, why the taxpayers of Nova Scotia, and I would submit, there's a lot of waste. It's waste that we have to continually to double track every time we want to get some information. And yes, I agree with the minister, Mr. Chairman, that sometimes if I ask a particular question looking for statistical data, let's say whether it be 4 years or 10 years, it may not be always readily available. But I dare say some information at the time of questioning during the budgetary process is a lot better than nothing or waiting a couple days. You know, it just absolutely behooves me how the department can continue to go on haphazardly. And that's what it is. It's haphazard, you know. And I will leave that particular issue for the time being. Another issue is with regards to the number of people that come from outside of Metro to the QE2. Whether it be the old VG or the new infirmary or whatever. One time that represented about 45 or 55%, I'm not sure what it was, percent of the total clientele for there. Can the minister give us some information as to what percentage of the clientele going into the QE2 facilities would be from outside of Metro?
The Minister of Health.
Basis. And I think it's somewhere around 2/3, 1/3, but we can get absolute figures.
2/3 outside?
No, 2/3 inside.
Mr. Chair, I wish I could just flip the switch and get that one. We believe the breakdown is 2/3 inside the metro area and 1/3 out. Again, I believe the member's asking in general because, and I believe that answer is accurate. If it's not accurate, staff can correct me. But again, it would depend on the procedure. For the cardio stuff, you know, that's only performed, a lot of it at the QE2, but there are many other procedures that are performed outside the metro area now that weren't in the past. So, but it would be about right, and then we'd have to figure in the out-of-province admissions into that total to be entirely accurate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
One final issue I have, Mr. Chair, and I'll turn it over to my colleague from Clare. It's with regards to the liver transplant program. I apologize. The province doesn't do that anymore, and patients would have to go to Ontario, I believe, is the location. I'm not sure if it's Windsor or somewhere in that general, Hamilton. London, I'm sorry. But there's a bit of a an additional cost burden to individuals that have to go there for themselves and their families. And that is to be rated as to where they would stand on the priority list or in terms of severity of the illness. And to go up and get tested to see if there would be a match, that sort of thing. They get a call. And they go up there, there's not a match, or for whatever reason they don't follow through with the operation. My understanding is that the individual patient or patients have to pay their own way home, and they have to pay their own hotel bill afterwards. But if they go through with the operation, then they don't pay. Is that correct?
Thank you. The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my understanding is that the patients will always pay for the travel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member from Cape Breton West.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, and I'll come back to this issue a little later with the minister. Thank you.
Member for his questions. I would like to recognize a member from Clare in the Liberal caucus with 17 minutes left in turn. Member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off with looking at the mental health services for Western Nova Scotia. As the minister is aware, I'm sure, the Tri-County area used to be served by 6 or 7 psychiatrists. Now our area, Mr. Chairman, is being served by only 1 psychiatrist. We know that one person can't do it all. People more than likely are not getting the help that they need. And I guess my first question to the minister is, what's happening to the people in our area that needs help?
The Minister of Health. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, the issue in some parts of the province of not enough psychiatrists is a serious one. That being said, we do continue to provide many services for people who need mental health treatment, that we make every effort to ensure that the urgent cases are treated first, and we continue with our physician recruitment program to try to attract not only psychiatrists but other medical specialists and professionals to Nova Scotia. And we are successful in the sense that we have been able to increase the number of doctors by about 2 per month. But that being said, there are deficiencies in various parts of Nova Scotia, and I wouldn't try to pretend otherwise.
That would be the western area right there.
Member for Clare.
Chairman, the Department of Health, the government back in February announced a new policy for mental health services for the province. I guess my question would be, is the department still committed in providing service for the Tri-County area? That's Digby, Yarmouth, Shelburne counties.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we do have, designated beds, 16 in the Digby area. Digby and Yarmouth. And but though the numbers that we have for mental health beds don't include general medicine beds that may be used to treat persons with psychiatric illness. nor do they include long-term beds at the McKay unit at the Nova Scotia Hospital. So we do have beds for people requiring that kind of care. And we do have community services and GPs working in partnership with mental health teams. And that's one of the approaches that our recent announcements of money for mental health were intended to address, is the idea of not thinking solely in terms of psychiatrists for treating all aspects of mental health, but to try to get teams together that can support each other and treat people very, very quickly. And we do also continue to support consumer groups to the best of our ability in this area. It's an extremely important area to try to move forward on because, for the most part, it's not just the patient that requires the help, it is often the family that requires help. And we need people to be able to work with all of them together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the Minister indicated, we have 16 mental health beds in the Yarmouth Regional Hospital. We used to have 22 mental health beds when we had 6 or 7 psychiatrists. Now, with only 1 psychiatrist, we have 16 beds, as the Minister indicated. I understand the doctor now is basically responsible 24 hours a day from Monday to Friday. Weekends, we have GPs that basically are covering weekends. So I went to check on the webpage of the department for what postings were available, especially in the Tri-County area. I noticed, Minister, that you only had 1 posting looking for 1 psychiatrist. Now, looking back at providing a service to the people of the Tri-County area, when you look back, Mr. Chairman, in the last several years, probably in the last 5 to 10 years, with 7 doctors, 7 psychiatrists providing that service to the people in our counties, unfortunately, we all recognize that 1 doctor cannot continue to provide the same level of service. It doesn't matter, who you are. Again, looking at the Department of Health, trying to help this doctor to try to recruit someone to come in and help this individual in providing appropriate care level for the people of the Tri-County. I thought it was kind of, bizarre that the Department of Health would only have 1 posting looking for trying to recruit 1 psychiatrist for the Tri-County area. So my question to the Minister is, why is your department only looking at recruiting one psychiatrist and providing only benefits to 1 individual that would be interested in coming down and providing services to the people of those counties?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in the most recent round of negotiations, in the most recent alternate arrangement, we are actually in the process of looking for 12 to 15 psychiatrists for the province of Nova Scotia. And we believe that the recent fee schedule will allow us to attract new psychiatrists to Nova Scotia. In terms of the bed reduction, that is fairly typical of all parts of the country in an attempt to move to more community-based treatment and not base everything on beds per se. That being said, I think all of us are aware that in the deinstitutionalization of many patients with mental problems, that there are people who fall through the gaps, and I know there was a recent interview with the psychiatrist from the Yarmouth area on Information Morning within the last month and a half or so, and he he does need help, it would seem, from that interview with him, and he was particularly interested in receiving more support in working with youth. He did recognize that the new facility that we'll be building in the metro area could be of benefit to him, but there's no question that he needs more help for all the work that he's trying to do in that area. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Clare.
Mr. Chairman, as the Minister is aware, many, and I don't, believe that the Tri-County area is the only rural area in the province that are in need of specialists in the mental health field. I understand there's other parts, especially in the Colchester area. The Minister certainly understands there's a need to try to provide that extended services out to many parts of rural Nova Scotia, especially when you're trying to recruit, as the Minister indicated, a number of psychiatrists, specialists in this field to help the people of Nova Scotia. There's definitely a greater need to provide this service, especially to areas away from the metro area. I guess what I'm trying to find out is, what is the department trying to, or offering in trying to recruit someone to maybe work in those areas that are maybe 3, 4, 5 hours away from Metro Halifax? So is the department offering any specific benefits, or is the department, does they have a focused campaign in order to try to attract these specialists to areas of the province where they're greatly in need?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
You could stay with your 15 if you want from that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, we've negotiated a fee increase for psychiatrists with the Medical Society, about a 26% increase, actually. We were way behind in Nova Scotia in what we were paying psychiatrists, and we believe that this new salary level will go a long way towards us being able to attract new psychiatrists to Nova Scotia. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Minister indicated earlier that, especially in our area, there's definitely a shortage, and I think everyone agrees with the Minister. And I'm not blaming this Minister, Mr. Chairman, for the shortage. That shortage has been created over the years, but there's definitely a need to provide this service to the people down in the western end of the province. The Minister earlier talked about, these mental health teams, not just a psychiatrist, but different other people involved in providing the service. I guess my next question to the Minister is, what's the department's future plans in providing mental health services for the Tri-County area?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, The overall cost over the next number of years, we estimate to be about $17 million. Right now, the funding for mental health services is administered out of the Department of Health. It probably won't stay there, but right now we're trying something new, and we want the plan to work. And and as we develop the teams in Cape Breton, in Halifax, we'll be able to have a better idea of how the teams work and what would be the most essential aspect of these teams, that would include psychologists and social workers and other people, as the best kind of team to have in some of the less populated areas. The standards are ours, the operations are not, and gradually, as we learn more about what works and what doesn't and what has the best outcomes, we will be able to transfer these funds to the district health authorities to administer themselves. That's generally the way it's worked in the past when we've developed something new. We hold the funds until the system is working reasonably well, and then transfer them in a way that we know they're fairly allocated to the districts. There is one aspect of mental health services that we haven't talked about much. Actually, we haven't talked about it in terms of healthcare much at all in this estimates yet, but that's the development of telehealth, which does work in some cases with mental health patients as it does with other patients. In other words, you could, the psychiatrist or psychologist or the person whose expertise is sought can talk with the patient and his or her doctor or his or her social worker electronically. And I mean, this obviously doesn't substitute for, the ordinary direct care we all think about all the time, but it's becoming more common, and it's reasonably popular to patients and providers, because the patients care about getting the treatment, and it's certainly a lot better than driving to Halifax and having to wait in a doctor's office or a hospital to be able to make your appointment with your own doctor at home and do this through the use of modern technology. So it's something that we will be using more of, but not obviously a total substitute. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, the member has approximately 20 seconds left.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the minister indicated, and I'll come back to that later, the provincial budget for mental health in this province is $17 million. Is that correct? No?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The standards that we've recently developed for mental health will take about $17 million to implement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Order, please. The member's time has expired. The chair recognizes the member for Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chairman, and to the minister. I have an issue that it's with respect to the brain injured, a group of people who've been fighting for proper services in the province of Nova Scotia for many, many years. There continues to be a real scarcity of appropriate, I say appropriate services for people who, as a result of accidents or other incidents, find themselves in a situation where they require different types of care. I wrote the minister. I think her and her officials know about this issue. It's regarding a young gentleman by the name of Ryan Sullivan, who back in 2001 had an accident. He nearly drowned, or did drown, but then recovered, but has suffered a brain injury as a result of that accident. And since since the accident. This happened in New Brunswick. He's been back in Halifax. His family live in Herring Cove, and he's been receiving service at the care at the rehab center, and under very good care from officials, doctors, Dr. Brenda Joyce in particular, and others at the rehab center. Different care, appropriate care at different levels, but most importantly, I guess, is that his parents have been front and center for him and have been providing 24-hour care since he came out of the rehab center and has been at home. They have been looking after Ryan. What he has been receiving now for a few months as a result of the advice from the rehab center, from the doctors, is he's been receiving attendant care. Someone who comes, they've paid for, they hired as a result of very clear recommendations from the staff at the rehab center. They hired an individual who comes out and works with Ryan on a part-time basis, twice a week, 3 hours a day. And this person takes Ryan out, and they do various things, like to go to a movie, or they go to the shopping mall. They do various activities, and one of the purposes of these activities is to help Ryan with areas where he has deficiencies in, and initiating things. He has problems with distractions, disengaging himself from activities. Once he starts, she puts him on a timer and says, "Okay, go into this store and buy this list of things, and you have 10 minutes to do it." And because it's difficult for him to follow those kinds of specific tasks and do it in the time required. So that's what he's been doing. That's what they've worked through with the rehab center and the department. We've requested the department pay some attention to the situation, the particular needs of this young man and his family, to provide them with some assistance. Someone from the department did go out there earlier this year and talk to them about what kind of services they needed, but primarily they were looking at home care services. And as his parents have said in a letter to myself, and I think to you, Minister, they don't need home care services. They can look after him fine. It's just that period of time where he goes out under the responsibility or under the guidance of someone who is paid and trained, that he goes out and does things. Because what they're trying to do, of course, and what the professionals are trying to do is to help Ryan reintegrate so that he can live independently and look after himself and make the kind of contribution that he used to make and would like to make in the future. So what we asked, it seemed to me that there was some willingness to provide home care for this family, for this young man, but they don't need that. They need the attendant care, and they've asked, and I asked the minister in a letter dated March the 25th, if her officials would consider providing financial assistance for the therapeutic attendant that their son needs in order to continue with his rehabilitation. And again, this is rehabilitation that has been specifically recommended by Dr. Brenda Joyce, head of physical medicine at the rehab center, and by Jill Robbins, director of healthcare services at the rehab center. He's been getting this care now since 2001. It's progressing, and they need some support from officials. And as I indicated to the minister in my letter. The programs can't be too rigid, that they are not adaptable to the actual needs of people who require care. And I think this is a good case. And I'd like to ask the minister if she and her officials have given this matter some consideration. I know they haven't had the opportunity, perhaps, to advise the Sullivans, but I wonder if she could bring me up to speed on what her thinking is and her officials' thinking is with respect to this issue.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the member from Halifax Atlantic has brought up a very good point, a very good area in which we have a lot of work to do. In terms of in-hospital care and short-term rehab, we do, a fairly decent job. But in terms of the amount that we do for the brain injured in some particular cases is not what it might be. We do have a proposal in from the QE2 for a more intensive rehabilitation program. We're looking at that. And in terms of individuals with particular problems, I agree with the member from Halifax Atlantic that the rules can't be too rigid because the circumstances do vary considerably. And all I can say is that we're always willing to go back and look at individual cases to see what we can do, because we don't have it's an area where we don't necessarily have a lot of rules, so we can't necessarily be breaking them. It's a growing problem as well as a heart-wrenching one for families. I think most members of the House realize that even the explosion in the number of all-terrain vehicles in our province, the number of accidents caused by them, have increased the number of brain injuries that we're seeing in our hospitals. That and car accidents is the largest source, but not the only source. And it is an area that we need to do a lot of work on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me just say that I've heard this from a number of ministers of health. We had a case in a woman from Herring Cove who was in a very serious accident many years ago, and her husband was fought tooth and nail over throughout the 90s, and for the appropriate level of care for this woman, and she finally is in a private facility out of province that is being fully subsidized by the province, and appropriately so. But it took a lot of heartache, a lot of anguish, a lot of his own resources in order to get to this situation. There are other cases, and Mr. Chairman, if this young fellow was in the center or was in some kind of an institutional setting, then the care would be provided. Or if if they wanted, they could, as they were told by the official from continuing care, that if they required it, they could get resources for home care. But what they're saying is they don't need that. They do, they would like to see you spend some money to help them, because it's extremely important for his family. They have, the father retired. He's there constantly in order to provide the support that his son needs. They are going above and beyond, but I'll tell you that they want to see some sign from this government that they're prepared. They recognize the contribution, and they don't want it. They want to see this young fellow continue to be cared for in his home, and to move forward in his rehabilitation, and they are prepared to provide some support. We're not talking about great sums of money here, but we're talking about ongoing support at a level that surely is well within the responsibility of the minister. And again, they were told by the official from Continuing Care that their request for a therapeutic attendant was outside the programs currently provided. And as the minister just acknowledged, there aren't very many programs currently provided. I had a long discussion with the deputy about this last fall, and he acknowledged as well that there just simply are not programs available in this, for this group of Nova Scotians. There is room there. I think the minister has acknowledged that and would agree to it. And I ask her again if she hasn't considered the case of Ryan Sullivan and his parents, Don and Sylvia, that she and her officials will give serious consideration to the merits of providing financial assistance for the therapeutic attendant that is so desperately needed for the rehabilitation of their son, Ryan.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, yes, we will always look at individual cases, and we'll certainly take another look at this particular case. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Halifax Atlantic. Good. Sorry, the chair now recognizes the member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, my questions for the Minister of Health relate to dental hygiene, and particularly the Dental Hygienists Association. I know that they have been attempting to get some form of self-regulation, and I was hoping the Minister may be able here today to tell us, from her understanding, what stage the process is in of any legislation or ongoing discussions with the Dental Hygiene Association.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I know that the department is looking at some form of omnibus legislation for the fall that would cover a number of healthcare groups that currently don't have their own legislation. But as to specific requests or discussions, sorry, with the dental hygienists, I have not been informed about that, and if there is something recent, I will let the member know today or tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The dental hygienists are taking the opportunity, I believe, to meet with all the caucuses. They met with ours in the last couple of days. And from that, we got an understanding, excuse me, that they are interested in proceeding with legislation. Can the minister tell me if she has met with the dental hygienists, and if not, is it something she's prepared to do in the next little while in order to get a better understanding of their situation?
The Honourable Minister of Health. Order, please. Just before the minister replies, perhaps we could just keep the conversations to a dull roar, please. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly, there are a number of groups that I've been meeting with and will continue to meet with, and we don't refuse to meet with groups of people who want to meet with the department. So I can't give a commitment as to the exact time, but certainly if they'd like to meet with the department, we'd be glad to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to get some understanding as well, Madam Minister, with regard to exactly how dentistry, dental hygiene, dental assistants fall within the scope of the Department of Health. Is there a separate branch or division that deals with oral hygiene, for example, or is it someone in a policy position? Who is it that, if they have particular concerns or questions, in the department that they can go to as the person who's an executive director or something in charge of those issues.
Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, a lot of the issues to do with dental hygiene are in the umbrella of public health. We do some public health education on dental hygiene as well under ancillary programs, and of course as well there's a connection with the university and the health professions and any funding we provide there. So there's a couple of different areas. There isn't really a dental division, but it's mainly under public health and ancillary programs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for Cole Harbour, Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe the minister can clarify. There's public health, and then there's a separate area called ancillary programs. Are they two separate? Can you give me an